Greetings builders, Daniel here and welcome to the part 4 of my top 12 builds for the Affliction League. If you missed the previous parts, don't worry, you can find their links together with the POBs and complete guides for all those builds in the video description. And if this video helps you, please leave a thumbs up to support the channel. Thank you very much and let's get into it! In third place we have an amazing archer skill, the Tornado Shot Deadeye with the Ranger class. Tornado Shot is so strong that it doesn't even need a returning projectile support gem. This way you can keep your Mirage Archer for a smoother clear speed. Just as I did with the Lightning Arrow build, the complete guide of this one will also count with two versions of the build, a budget and a complete one. Each has its own POB and passive tree, so you can start this build even on a low budget and upgrade it later. To list the pros of this build, I have to start talking about the clear speed and the boss damage. With Tornado Shot, you're going to clear maps in less than a minute and kill bosses in less than a second. This build is also not complicated to put together, I totally recommend it for everyone. Now to list the cons, I would say that this build is not very tanky. Even though you have some defensive layers, it's important to take advantage of your ranged attacks and stay far from danger. If you don't mind your position, you might die. About the budget, you can get it destroying early endgame maps with only around 80 chaos. To comfortably advance to yellow maps, I recommend investing around 150 chaos, and for easily completing your Atlas, I recommend investing around 4 divines. But if you go for the complete version, you need to invest at least 4 more divines. Don't forget that on PoEbuilds.net you can find a list with all the equipment that you need to buy for this build, with direct links for examples being sold by other players. On the budget version, you only need one mandatory unique item for this build, the Yoke of Suffering amulet that causes all of your elemental damage to shock. This way our enemies take a lot more damage. On the complete version, on the other hand, besides the Yoke of Suffering, you also need the Lionized Fall and the Thread of Hope unique jewels. They are expensive but grant a huge boost to your damage. For clear speed, I'll give this build 10 out of 10. You fire many projectiles with high attack speed and those projectiles explode in more projectiles, chain on enemies, bounce off walls and go everywhere. You're going to kill enemies that you never even had a chance to see. The boss damage is also amazing and deserves 10 out of 10. Tornado Shot is super strong and with the help of your ballistas you're going to kill bosses so fast that you won't even notice them. For the survivability, I'll give this build 8 out of 10. Even though you have armor, evasion, spell suppression and you can kill enemies from a good distance, this build isn't very tanky. If you don't mind your position, you might die. Next, in second place, we have the super powerful cast on critical Tornado Shot Ice Spear Deadeye with the Ranger class. This build combines all the power of a cast on critical build with the safety of a ranged attack. It has an amazing clear speed and it's capable of a huge boss damage. To list the pros of this build, I would start with this amazing clear speed you are seeing. Look how satisfying it is to catch so many ice spears from our Tornado Shot projectiles. I assure you that you will love clearing maps with this beauty. This character is awesome for bosses as well. It deals a lot of single target damage, even from a great distance. Above all, it's also very safe to play. You kill monsters and map bosses from afar, keeping them frozen into place. And for those bosses that are immune to freeze, you can also keep a safe distance and destroy them anyway. If by any means they manage to reach you, you still have over 90% chance to evade attacks, high chance to suppress spell damage, and high armor. Now to list the cons, I will start saying that this build isn't for everyone. You need a lot of currency to put it together. Another issue is that it isn't easy to build, because it needs many specific rare items. As for budget, this build will need at least 15 divine orbs to put together. As I said, it's an expensive one. You need 3 mandatory unique items for this build. The first one is the Asnaf's Mark helmet that triggers socketity skills when you attack. This grants even more ice spears. We also need the Maloney's mechanism. This one is the only quiver that has sockets. We're going to use those extra sockets to debuff bosses for a lot more damage. Finally, we also need 2 Intuitive Leap unique jewels to save many points in our passive tree. For clear speed, this one is surely a 10 out of 10. Playing with this build is not only fast but also extremely satisfying. The boss damage also deserves 10 out of 10. You end up casting many ice spears and all of them can hit the target, causing an incredible shotgun effect. For the survivability, I'll give it 9 out of 10. This build can do everything from a safe distance. It freezes enemies, it has a huge amount of evasion, armor and spell suppression. It will be hard to die if you always mind your position on guardians and pinnacle bosses. Finally, in first place, here's the new and incredible Cyclone of Tumult Slayer with the Duelist class. This new PoE expansion brought the Transfigure gems with it. This means an alternative version of active steel gems. The Cyclone skill got the Cyclone of Tumult, that is a Cyclone wider and more powerful, but with the downside of being a lot slower. However, with an easy trick we can remove this downside and simply have a Cyclone with 33% more damage and 40% more area of effect. To list the pros of this build, I would start with its clear speed. It's just amazing to be always moving and massacring all the poor enemies on the way. The boss damage is also incredible. Once the build is done, you are going to kill even the big bosses in just a matter of seconds. And above all of that, this build is very simple and easy to put together. Now, to list the cons, I would point a few important issues and I'd like to ask you to pay close attention here. You see, this build has a great survivability once it's done, but when you're leveling your character you need to pace your progression, because you're always very close to enemies. If you're not prepared, you are going to die. So take the extra time to pick up a few more levels before progressing to a high tier content. Another useful tip about your survivability is how to deal with stuns. On this build we get stun immunity with a charm on the new Wildwood Primalist Ascendancy. It is super cheap and easy to get, but if you forget it, you're going to have a bad time. As for budget, you can get it destroying early endgame maps with only around 90 chaos. To comfortably advance to yellow maps, you need to invest around 115 chaos, and for easily completing your atlas, I recommend investing around 6 divines. You only need one mandatory unique item for this build, the Stampede boots that guarantee that your movement speed will always be 150% of its base. This means that the downside of Cyclone of Tumult will mean absolutely nothing to us. For clear speed, I'll give it 9 out of 10. Cyclone never stops moving and have a huge area of effect, so you can farm your maps without the need to stop for casting or anything like that. It's just awesome and very satisfying. The boss damage is just amazing, deserves 10 out of 10. When this build is done, you're going to easily achieve over 15 million DPS that is more than enough to destroy bosses in just seconds. Now for the survivability, I'll give it 9 out of 10. This build achieves over 100,000 effective HP because of high armor, evasion, spell suppression, fortify, and a lot of instant life leech. Now, with the huge area of effect bonus from Cyclone of Tumult, you don't even need to stay very close to enemies on endgame, what gives you even more survivability. And that's it for today, guys. Have you played any of those builds during this league? Please don't forget to share your experience in the comments and leave a thumbs up to support the channel. I wish you guys an amazing day, and don't forget to keep building!